Peace, peace. What's going on, family? We're gonna get started in a few minutes. Just waiting for a couple of people to enter the room. We're gonna speak about Kamala Harris and Jessica Yellen. I believe Jessica's, or is it Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary? And I was just tagged in another post by our sister out in Los Angeles, John Hope Bryant. And I'm going to read his tweet. It said, "This is happening today, this morning, at Operation Hope, and I helped inspire then Treasury Secretary Jack Lew to rename the U.S. Treasury Annex Building to the Freedmen's Bank Building in honor of former slaves who had put every dime into that bank, chartered by Lincoln." For those of you who've followed the last two spaces that we've done, and for those of you who follow our YouTube channel regularly, we speak about how the Freedmen's Bureau, oh, excuse me, the Freedmen's Bank was the first federally chartered bank. So, we definitely we have to talk about this today. For I don't know how many of you actually watched any of the video on Fox News, but I mean, it wasn't just aired on Fox News. I've seen it on Fox News' YouTube channel. I'm going to get into some of that as well. Again, I'm waiting for a couple of the brothers to jump on. But in the meantime, in between time, I guess we could open up this conversation. And I want to have a couple people come on and tell me, what they thought about what they heard with this forum first and foremost, and speak to the audacity of naming it. As a matter of fact, the brother that I have requested, brother Leon, I'm gonna bring you up to speak. He was the one that tagged me in the post, and I was like, bro, I don't know what you're talking about, and somebody posted a link on the, let's see, my brother Aliyah. Somebody posted a link on the thread, and I was able to see it, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" I was almost angry. It interfered with my sleep last night a little bit. So, I got my brothers on. I just sent invites to my brother Ali and my brother Logic. Brother Leon, tell me, what were your thoughts on what you seen with this particular forum? Found information about what is it, $8.9 billion, I believe, that, and which is a story that we covered on Be the Power. But
Yes,
we
that's
just had
correct.
no idea. Yeah, we just had no idea that they had changed this particular building to the Freedmen's Bank, or at least this forum that they were holding, were naming it after the Freedmen's Bank. What was your take on that, brother?
All right, thanks for having me on. I actually watched the whole thing. Um, I really didn't care what they were talking about for the simple fact that none of that money that us Freedmen will never see that money. One, um, they were pretty much defined as minority investment, trying to put money back into the minority community. Which all sounds good, but it won't be money that would go into Freedmen's pockets or their hands. They were pretty much talking about Hispanics and immigrants, which I don't know if people really know, but they already get funding. Immigrants get funding, especially if they're legal immigrants. They get funding. The only ones that don't get funding are illegal immigrants. Legal immigrants, like they have the ones from like Afghanistan or different other African countries. or Japan, China, and Japan, they get money, they get funding, they get immigrational funding, access that blacks or freedmen do not get or do not even have access to. Same thing goes with the Hispanics. If you're illegal Hispanics, there is funding. The illegal Hispanics are the ones that don't get funding. But the thing I'm fearing is that this investment, they will have access. The illegal immigrants or illegal Hispanics will probably get the funding before us freedmen, which I think is wrong. And it's kind of funny that they would have Representative, let's just say Representative Vice President Harris trying to lead the charge, which she don't speak for freedmen. Hell, she don't even speak for Black Americans. But technically,
That's
she's not
right.
even a black. Technically, she's not even a Black American. Period.
That's right. That's right.
She is Jamaican and East Indian descent,
That's right.
and I don't even know if she's American because she actually went to high school in Canada.
Come on, bro.
So
Come on, bro.
so you could say that she's just curated to appeal to the government structure as representing the blacks or Black Americans or African Americans, but she's not really representing freedmen at all. Janet Yellen is the Secretary of Treasury. Her take, it sounded positive, but like I said, we won't see that money. And like I said, and actually, I think I sent it to a couple people that link. I think I sent that link to you, Nyhiem, and Logic, and a couple other people last night. That's why it's Fox. But then Roland Martin jumped in and said, "No, I had it on my
Yeah.
network too."
Yeah. That
I
was.
didn't even add him.
Hold
I
on.
did not even.
That's
He
what I
not even
was
add him
saying.
in the link, and he jumped on
I,
it. He's like,
I
"Well, I
was.
had
It
it
was
on my
weird.
network." I'm like, "Really?"
Look. Hey, bro. It was weird, right? Because I took a screenshot. First, I went through your whole tweet to make sure. I
Right.
was like, I'm pretty certain when I first seen this tweet, I didn't see Roland Martin's name tag. Somebody mentioned him, but I didn't see his name tag.
Yeah, I
He
mentioned him,
just
but I didn't add him.
randomly, yeah, he just randomly jumps on this tweet,
Yep.
which signified to me that these people are keeping a close eye on what's going on. And I took it, my interpretation of that was that he was rubbing it in, basically. Like, yeah, we just we're gonna keep one up in y'all. Like, what
Nah,
made Roland Martin
he tried to
of all people?
he tried to promote it because I watch his show. Now, only reason why
Hmm.
I watch his show because there are some things that he does show on there, that's informational
Oh
for
yeah,
black.
no doubt, no
But
doubt.
it was kind of weird that he jumped on it. Okay, he did have it on his network. I looked on his network,
Hmm.
and for some reason it was there. I watched it, but there was no volume. So I'm like, well, that's a no go. So that's why I went back to the one I found on the Fox Business, and I just started listening to that one. So I'm like, well, the Fox Business one I can hear just fine. So that's why I sent you that link instead. But yeah,
Indeed,
but
indeed.
like, oh no, it was a slap in the face, and they had a nerve to have the Freedmen's Bank as the backdrop for this forum, and I didn't see anything that, as far as I'm concerned, nothing for Freedmen was even mentioned. It was more for everybody else. Yet again, it seemed like they keep shying away from destiny of the rights of freedmen as far as financially and spirituality and cohesiveness for freedmen's. Like I don't hate our brothers, our African brothers. There is a point that there is stuff for us freedmen. Basically, we have to get our stuff, not stuff together per se, but there's stuff in this country that needs to be addressed for us first. Everybody else follow. You know what I'm saying? That's all.
Indeed, indeed. I got my brothers on. Y'all already know Be the Powers and the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. What let me before y'all go on, I just want to like give a brief on what I heard
Man,
with this, right? Kamala brought up all of these great ancestors of ours, Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, etc., etc. She grounded what she was about to say with the struggles and the plight of our people. But she has never, ever moved in the spirit of any of these people. And we know her record as a prosecutor out there in California. It wasn't good because her target was black people. It's just as simple as that. There's a series on Vice where a brother, he was an up and coming actor, maybe rapper. I can't remember. I watched the episode last year where it's Kamala Harris knew that this man was innocent, this brother, this black, and well, she didn't do anything to ensure this man's release. He had to do, I think, 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. There was another case where a woman, they passed some new law out there. It was some type of truancy law. Somebody refresh my memory on that. And if your child missed too many days of school, they would come arrest the parents. For this is how you know Kamala Harris wasn't or isn't grounded or rooted in our history or in our struggle. So she would have the cameras out there basically perk walking these parents. So one of the children missed school because this was a sickly child. But somehow that slipped through the cracks of the reporting to the police agency and whoever they were in alignment at the school, and they arrested this black woman, perk walked her. We heard what Kamala Harris said insofar as when she was pressed on the question about reparations. No, I'm not just going to do anything for black people. No, that's exactly how she said it. Kamala Harris is a disaster. And we feel that this is a hijacking of the Freedmen's Bank again, especially since we are starting to generate energy around this term of ours, this status of ours, Freedmen. One quick point before I pass it. I was downtown in the city I was in a few years back, and there was these college kids out there. white girl walks up to me and she says, "Hey, you know we're protesting and doing something for LGBTQ rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." So I guess her seeing me as a a quote unquote black man, she felt that, you know, she could throw in a little of my history to get me to move on the stuff that she was saying. I said, "Excuse me?" And she repeated this stuff. I said, "So are you trying to tell me that LGBTQ folks were lynched and burned? Were you Are you telling me that they were enslaved? Are you telling me that they were a victim of Jim Crow laws? Are you telling me that they were victims of segregation?" I ran down a whole list of things. And when I got finished, the white girl, the sign she was holding up, it was getting lower and lower. She looked at me and said, "I'm sorry. I apologize." Now, I bring that up to say every group, every group has talking points designed out of our pain or suffering so that they can get the things that they need from this government. While we get nothing. Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, she spoke to how the Treasury from day one was going to make these investments into these poor communities, racial equity. That's what she called it, racial equity. Does anybody feel any of that equity in this room? Does anybody feel any of the economic equality? $9 billion. That money went to investors. This was just a new way opportunity zones that's been around since President Nixon's campaign. when he called them enterprise zones and promoted this fictitious form of black power, where they gave us the guise that they were investing in business, black business, but really these were nothing more than slush funds. And this was exposed during Trump's presidency. The New York Times ran an article on this very topic, that these opportunity zones are nothing but slush funds for the rich. See, those secrets stay buried and hidden depending on who is in office. It just so happened to be Trump. So they decided that they was going to expose this thing. They didn't need black votes swinging over to the Republicans, especially to Trump. Like, let's expose this opportunity zone thing for what it is. And that's all this sounds like to me. Minority businesses. What does that mean exactly? Define minority, because white women are also classified as minorities who qualify for affirmative action. So somebody in that upper tier of politicians needs to define to us what minority means and what it means to us specifically, and then give us a breakdown on how historically, especially since white women have been added to the minority roles under affirmative actions, how that money has reached our neighborhoods. Because I grew up in those neighborhoods, visited them all over New York City all of my life, and I've seen no improvements outside of facial work that was done to restore some bricks and add some flower pots and bushes in the housing projects. Nothing to change the conditions. We owned none of the stores up the street where we lived at. None of them. Not one of them besides one. There was a meat market. Old Leroy. He was a remnant of the 50s and 60s. Still owned that meat market until he just was too old enough to pass. And that his meat market became a Spanish restaurant. So where is this investment? Where is this investment? So I'm gonna open it up to my bros. Y'all,
Peace,
let's
peace,
speak on it.
peace,
Let's
peace,
build.
peace. Check
Yeah,
it
bro.
out. Good shit, bro. Now, so let's get straight into it, right? So I want to start with what Secretary Yelling came in with her opening statements, right? I don't know how to put nothing, no links in the space, but we got the transcripts, right? So everybody can read it for themselves. If somebody knows how to make it available where everyone can get the link to the transcripts, just post it somewhere so they can get it. If not, I'm gonna tweet it. I'm gonna tweet the transcripts out and just follow me and get the transcripts, right? And so it starts out like we're gonna track this. What they're doing is very, very criminal and concentrated. Check this out. Her opening statements. Secretary Yelling says, "Thank you so much, Madam Vice President, and welcome everyone. We are honored to host you at Treasury today. This is the Freedmen's Bank Forum. Now, this is how they're framing this, as the Freedmen's Bank Forum. And I know most of us are familiar with this history. Who the hell, first of all, who is in this building, right? And who, like, obviously they don't know, or they're not familiar with this history, isn't taught in school. This history isn't highlight any academic curriculum, right? So what do you mean you're familiar with this, right? So she's just saying anything. But pay attention to the details, right? She said, founded by Lincoln in 1865 to help newly freed slaves build wealth. The bank's books were in shambles by 1874. So she breezed through a whole bunch of shit that happened, right? And just talk about how the bank was in shambles, largely because of poor oversight by a Congress that had waning interest in Reconstruction. Later on, we're going to go into detail on why the bank it didn't fail. It was destroyed. It was more than poor oversight. Like, that's just like she's trying to take the sting out of it, right? And she said Frederick Douglass, who had agreed to be the bank's president, tried to save it. He deposited $10,000 of his own money. But it sounded like she got that straight out of Mercer Broudman's book, The Color of Money. Obviously, she left omitted a lot of the history, right? But the show, but the show of confidence didn't work. The bank failed. It did not fail. The bank was overtaken. It was overthrown. It was looted and plundered, and that should have been the language she was using. And more than 61,000 African Americans lost their savings. They were freedmen. It was the Freedmen's Bank. Like, see, like y'all got to pay attention to the cover-ups, right? These weren't African Americans. The Freedmen's Bank was for freedmen, newly freed, emancipated slaves. It was for the freedmen. That's why they didn't call it the African American Bank. It was the Freedmen's Bank, right? And so Douglas's biographer, David Blight, called the affair one of the greatest aspirations, but also one of the greatest tragedies of Reconstruction. So now you're talking about one of the greatest tragedies of Reconstruction that happened to a specific people. Let's follow the crime, right? She said, we're here today because in many ways we are still living through both that aspiration. Who the hell are we? What do you mean we? She ain't living through it. Kamala Harris sure the hell didn't live through it. What does she mean we are living through these aspirations and tragedies? The vice president just described this very well. From Reconstruction to Jim Crow to the present day, our economy has never worked fairly for Black Americans or really for any American of that color. See how they watch the plays with the language. They talk about us, just like Nyhiem said. They ground and they frame and they root and they anchor everything into our tragic history in America. But then they keep weaving in people who didn't experience none of that harm and none of that tragedy. None of these people that she's about to introduce later had anything to do with any of these tragedies. Most of them weren't even nowhere around. You understand? Right. And so she says, she said, and this is the real part that's really for any American of color. What does that even mean? If you go historically and look at what the word colored person meant, it was talking about Black folks. It wasn't Mexicans. It wasn't Chinese. It wasn't Japanese. It was Black folks. They're reinventing definitions to fit new narratives for their criminal enterprise. And that's what it is, family. Well, since setting foot in this building last January, the secretary's talking, we have tried to change that to finally make good on the aspirations of the Freedmen's Bank. Woo! How are you trying to make good on the aspirations of the Freedmen's Bank and not addressing the freedmen? How are you not going to talk about the inherited disadvantage and the continuous perpetual plunder of a specific group of people? The Chinese aren't freedmen. The Hispanics weren't freedmen. There was no people of color in the Freedmen's Registry and the Freedmen's Rolls. You understand? It was a specific group of families. What the hell is the secretary talking about? She's obviously well informed, but she is intentionally crafting a warped narrative purposefully. This is a crime in progress, family. She said, so to finally make good on the aspiration of the Freedmen's Bank by transforming how Treasury works. Okay, well, what does this transformation look like? We have completed Treasury's first equity review, looking across the department and asking, where are our operations not as inclusive as they could be? Now she's looking for shit that she should. This ain't nothing you got to look for. Like just in the past few years, the wealth data, the racial wealth gap, and all this information has been at the forefront of American politics. What does she mean they had to scour and look for where these inequities were at? Everybody knows where the inequities are. The government created the inequities. So you can't let people talk. We can't let people get away with talking like this, right? She said, we've brought on the most diverse leadership team in Treasury history. All this diversity. You don't need a diverse team. You need a Freedman team. You don't need a diverse team. You need a team that's dedicated to restoring the freedmen. We've brought up the most diverse leadership team in Treasury history. Half of our senior appointees are people of color. What does that have to do with the freedmen? Half of our senior appointees. What does that really mean? They're Hispanics? Now let's talk about people of color. And was there a coalition of people of color in slavery? Was there a coalition of people in color fighting in the Civil War to free Black bodies, right? The native Black Americans. Was that a coalition, right? This is nefarious bullshit. So they're incorporating these people who did none of the fighting, none of the heavy lifting, none of the burden bearing. And she's talking about people of color. This is a crime, family. We have to speak out against this. And so, were they there when we were going through Jim Crow and the lynching laws in the sundown towns? Were they there? And now, so what Nyhiem was talking about, we got to go to Kamala Harris's statement, because this goes straight into what uh, uh, Nyhiem just highlighted, right? She started going on like this is where you catch them, right? When you know your history. So going back to Kamala, right? She said, well, in many ways, they asked her a question. If she said, if you could share with us, the moderator said, if you could share with us how you got into issues of economic justice and equity. And so Nyhiem spoke about this and introduced this earlier, but this is what she says specifically, right? And look how crazy this is. She said, well, in many ways, I was born into it. I were born into it. As many of you know, my parents were active in the civil rights movement. What did they do in the civil rights movement? They always like to say I was active. Actively doing what? And I talk a lot about Thurgood Marshall. She talks a lot about Thurgood Marshall, but she don't do Thurgood Marshall work. She didn't legislate. She didn't rule. She didn't have Thurgood Marshall judicial. You understand? She wasn't a Thurgood Marshall attorney. But she talks about Thurgood Marshall a lot, being one of her heroes and guiding lights. In terms of the work I've chosen to do. What, destroy black folks? Because that's all you did as a attorney and working in the criminal justice system in California, right? But it was. Now, this is where it just gets real disrespectful. But I want to show you something right here, right? She says, it was Dr. King. Remember who was organizing the sanitation workers? She mentions Dr. King. She mentions A. Philip Randolph, another so-called hero of her growing up, who was, of course, organized the porters, right? And she said she mentioned even Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm like, wow, you talk about this people of color. So where are all the people of color heroes? All your goddamn heroes is Freedman, Thurgood Marshall, Dr. Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Philip A. Randolph. Why wasn't there a bunch of Mexicans you were talking about, or Japanese Americans, or why wasn't you mentioning Geronimo and Tecumseh and Red Bull and all that shit? You understand? See, you craft this legislation and you build an initiative off the pain and suffering of our ancestors and our people, and then you start incorporating people who have no claim to this justice repair, no claim to it, and you start talking about billions and trillions of dollars that they're allowed to get their hands on. And we know historically, the historical patterns is anytime there's a minority initiative set up, the number one beneficiary of it is white women, like Nyhiem said in the outstart, right? And then everyone else gets their hands on it. And then like Leon was talking about, which he was highlighting, that immigrants do get funding. And but one only correction I want to make is illegal immigrants as of late have been getting. Look at the details in the legislation. They're giving illegal aliens voting rights, illegal aliens driver's license, illegal aliens food stamps, and subsidizing their housing situations. You understand? And getting them jobs. This is what the Democrats are doing, right? This is a crime. This is a crime. This is a crime. And we have to look at it as a crime, because this is theft, right? This is theft. Ibrahim, come on. You got something to add, bro?
Yeah. You did a great job of breaking down like how they tried to anchor our history in the past and merge it in with groups in the future that just, immigrated to this nation. But they also was doing something else while they was having this Freedmen's Bureau BS they was trying to sell us. She was using our present day suffering and like mixing it with other groups. If you notice, she talked about a lady named Janice, right? The first thing she said was that like these undeserved communities, and we know during COVID that white businesses got all the loans that they needed. Latino businesses only got 20% I believe it was 25% or 23%. And she said, but the freedmen, she said African American businesses only got 13%. Then she goes in and starts telling the story about a lady named Brandy who owned 3 tea shops. And she said, hey, she had 3 tea shops, like Just Add Honey or something was the name, in Atlanta. And, she was low on cash, so she had to basically get rid of 2 tea shops. So I'm like, So the story she used was a black lady. Then the white lady named Janice, they kept talking about this equity director. And next up is this equity director. And I'm like, when it comes to anything about equity and inclusion positions, those are normally good paying jobs, but they're token positions for mostly black women, but sometimes black men. And when the equity person came out, it was a white lady. Janice, the moderator, was the equity person. So I'm like
That's right.
this lady didn't have enough integrity. She didn't have enough integrity to say, I don't want this token job. This is usually a job for a black person to take care of a black family. These people have no morals about themselves when it comes to anchoring themselves into our history. And just to call the whole thing like some type of freedman, if you notice, Miss Kamala Harris, right? The person who said she was born into this struggle, she knew less history than the secretary did. She knew like it was the secretary that was breaking down the history. Kamala didn't even know the history. She couldn't even give you a history lesson, So I'm gonna give you a history lesson just real quick on how we got to the Freedmen's Bank. So we started out, coming out of slavery, we knew that we needed wealth, right? And we knew the best way to build wealth was 2 ways, right? Access to capital, for us that was working and saving our money, and land, right? We was dependent on the government to give us some land. We started off, right, because we always hollering about do for self and like these co-ops that the immigrants come over and maybe you should be like this group or that group or that group, not knowing our own history. We started off with something called mutual aid societies, right? And mutual aid societies was anchored by black businessmen and black clergy. And what they would do was pull the resources of the community together and invest in one another. That's how you get something like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, right? So, and just think on how massive we did this, right? We scraped our pennies together. A good example was the AME Church of Philly, right? Founded by Richard Allen and Reverend Absola Jones, right? From 1847 to 1904, these brothers was able to scrape up $1 million. They donated $1 million to black educational programs supporting over 22 schools. So we was trying to do for self, and the do for self wasn't working. Yes, we made progress, but at this time, you went from a developing nation to like becoming the first world country because of, what slavery was able to allow white people to, the wealth they was able to amass. So we had these mutual aid societies and it just didn't work, right? So we knew we needed a bank. So the same day the Freedmen's Bureau was created, the Freedmen's, it was called the Loans and Savings or Freedmen's,
Savings and Trust Company.
Freedmen's Trust and Savings was born.
Yeah, Savings and Trust Company.
So you get all of this from black people doing everything they can do and trying to create wealth. And because they're by Congress, black people felt some sense of confidence in the bank. And, we pour money, and I'm not really going to elaborate too much on because most of us, if we do our due diligence, about the Freedmen's Bank, right? So, we put our money into the bank. But see, something happens during Reconstruction when Lincoln gets killed. President Andrew Johnson, he comes up with even more do for self rhetoric. Before Reagan, it was Andrew Johnson. He said, you know what? Black people don't need land. All they need is a place to put their money. If they just save their money, they can have the American dream. They can own land. They can be farmers. All you have to do is save your money. Now, at the same time, they was giving whites land through the Homestead Act, right? And they was giving business land through the expansion west and the railroad expansion. But he was telling us like, hey, if y'all just come together and save y'all money and put y'all money in this bank, and save it up. Now, it started off being only 1/3 was supposed to be towards investment, but later that changed when it went from New York to DC. It became half, and even half wasn't half because the Congress wasn't regulating the bank, so they got to just steal and go wild with it. But this is all Freedman history. This is all Freedman history. So when she takes this history and tries to spread it towards the Asians, the Latino community, and other communities, she even brought in the Native Americans. She said, "Hey, Kamala said there's little girls in the Native American community that's making these quilts, and like I think that's just so basic, but it because they own casinos and they trying to rifle companies, not a rifle, but the whole give me the whole company, right? But anyway, she said, you know, it's these little girls and they're making quilts on the reservation, and who you know, and they need these quilts. These quilts are important to their community and their culture and need loans. So if we can get this money to them, who knows them better but the people in their community? And they can do some type of CDF or something and get these people loans, right? So, you know, people try to anchor the need in our plight and our struggle. But then when the benefit comes, they roll it out to every other group. And that's why it's so important. This conversation is actually a continuation from last week's conversation, right? Because it's still, see, what they want to do is break reparations down to all these piecemeal groups and piecemeal projects and distribute it out to everybody. And then when it's time to come do the reparations, they're going to have a big old checklist. And they said, well, we already took care of, because we already took care of Black Wall Street check. We already took care of Freedman's Bank check. We already took care of student loan check. And basically saying, well, the only thing left to do is give you a minuscule check. And, you know, because we took care of everything else with class program. This
That's
right
right.
here
It's
was
an alley-oop.
blasphemy. This
Let
was,
me just
mm-hmm.
let me add I want to add some context to some of the historical points that you mentioned, right? You talked about them taking the land back, right? So the Union, right? So that's it, like, how did this stuff happen? Like, you got to understand that the government was doing this stuff. The Union General Oliver Otis Howard, you know, they named Howard University after him, right? He was the pleasant who had the unpleasant task. This is out of, like, if you haven't got The Color of Money by Mercer Baradaman, go get it, not now but right now. Go get it now, right? He said the Union General Oliver Otis Twist Howard, who had the unpleasant task of taking the land from the freedmen, not the people of color, the freedmen, right? After he had helped administer the order. Nevertheless, reasoned that the freedmen should have land, but they must pay for their land. President Johnson, like Ibrahim was talking about, said that the Freedmen's Bill was advantaging blacks over whites. What the hell was slavery doing? Huh? The freedmen, and nobody else. So the freedmen, so like, no, this is a continuation of the same rhetoric that was going on through the overthrowing of Reconstruction. The same thing that they're doing now, right? Now the white people are the poor victims. We're the ones who had over a century of slavery, and we're dealing with, you know, public subjugation and being emancipated into poverty and homelessness. But we're being, through these justice acts, these acts of justice and repair, he's saying that these are making white folks disadvantaged, right? He said it was advantaging blacks over whites, and that the and it
Freedman
was,
bill.
well. Let me, I'm gonna end. Hold on. Let me end at this point, right? And that it was time. It's time for blacks to fend for themselves, and it is earnestly hoped that instead of wasting away, they will, by their own efforts, establish themselves a condition of respectability and property. How in the hell one do that in the conditions? Now, just know that this was happening. It was in even a full harvest season that the Special Field Order 15 was administered. They had the freedmen, our ancestors, our family members, hadn't even had the land for a year yet before they took it back. And he talked about it's time for them to stand on their own too. After over a century of slavery and subjugation, come on now.
The Freedmen's Bill was giving black people land at the same time the Homestead Act was giving white people land. At the same time, they had other policy that was giving white businessmen land. But
Exactly, and they were
President
giving white
Johnson,
people 160 acres, and we were only talking about 40-acre plots of land grants to freedmen. So put that into consideration.
yes, yes. You know, and like you just have to see the nefariousness of it all, how this comes together. Like basically, the American way is to give white people something, but it's not to give black people anything, right? And if we're going to give black people anything, make sure they get less and make sure white people get way more. And what Kamala Harris said, well, we know black people got the least. And historically, they've got nothing or the least. But what we are going to do is rid of this bill in their history, right, of flight and plunder, knowing that till this day, 60% of black people are still unbanked or unbanked. Till this day, 60% of black people are still unbanked, right? And like when I say bank, just talking about a place to put your money. See, banking is a economic relationship, right? You don't just put your money, you grow this relationship. So when you don't have the capital, they give you credit lines. That's how capital and wealth is built in America. Not just through the money you make, but through credit lines, and you pay credit lines back and you create that relationship. But if 60% of black people are unbanked, we can't even get our stimulus check. We can't even get direct deposits. You see what I'm saying? There's a need for a Freedman's Bank, and this is not how you do it.
Indeed, indeed. Brother Ali, jump in there, share your thoughts on this so-called Freedmen's Bank Forum and what you thought about it.
Man, peace, family. It's really bad. The audacity, the fact that these people are so willing and so open with their anti-black racism. Really, that's what it is, man. Their anti-freedman racism specifically. I was looking at um their breakdown in terms of what it is that they were going to be talking about, and the thing that the points that they laid out, where they talked about to promote opportunities that support economic development for all American communities. The audacity to use the plight of our people, institution that was established on behalf of our people to try to bring us out of that muck and mire that they had put us in, and these people want to use that as a platform to do things for everybody else, while at the same time telling us not going to do anything for us. Man, this is, I mean, it's terrible. And this coming from the Democrats, a lot of this stuff. It's almost like everything that's happening bad for our people in this country seems to be coming from the Democratic Party at this point. Just about everything. I'm at the point. Me and Grim was talking about this earlier. For y'all that don't know, Grim is one of our brothers. We were talking about this earlier, and the fact that we almost at the point where we would rather deal with MAGA than to deal with these backstabbing Democrats. At least the MAGA people are right in your face. We could fight people that are right in our faces. These people that are behind our back, stabbing us in the back, who are supposed to be, who we've put our support behind for the past 50 years, man, this is terrible. Something has to change. Something has to change. I'd rather fight somebody who's blatant and in my face with their racism than these people who are backstabbing and lent our support to for all of this time. That's all I really have to say about it for right now, because you brothers been going in, man.
Indeed, indeed. Brother Josh, jump in there, bro.
Man,
And jump on after him, Brother Ty Harper.
yeah, when we first when we first got a wind of this title, it's when the title of when I just saw the caption and the title of the YouTube link where that recapped what essentially what went on the Freedmen's Bank Forum with Yellen and Kamala, you got to know I was incensed because they're not. We knew that they were not going to be talking about reparations. We knew that they were not going to be talking about specifics. See, and that's not even really a place. It's not even really a place for them to do that. They haven't even established first that the freedmen are still here. So it's almost essentially to me like
Come on.
they're just saying we're finished. We're not even a people. Like the freedmen are still here. We're still a group in the United States. We're still and we're here. But they're acknowledging the historical Freedmen's Bank without acknowledging the Freedmen. That is supremely disrespectful, and it just shows you that they didn't have us in mind anyway. Because we know anytime you're talking about giving something to minorities, when you spread it out, it's like it's like we were talking earlier when you have the story of the Little Red Hen. I think it was one of them old nursery rhyme stories or one of them bedtime stories. You know, the hen, when it's time to cook, when it's time to go and grow the food. I don't remember the story. You know, it was a long time ago. When it's time to prepare the food, cut up the food, and clean up and wash dishes, nobody's around to help with any of that. But then when it's time to eat the food, then everybody want to show up, and that's kind of what it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they use us. They grab us, you know, some of us grab, some of them grab the arm, some of them grab another arm and the legs, and they just use us as a battering ram to knock down the walls of opposition of whatever they trying to do. You know, with our story using the Freedmen's Bank, you know, invoking that name and have based on that to knock down the wall for everybody else to then after they finish with, they just discard us on the ground. Everybody trample over top of us and come in for opportunity, and then we try to get up all broken up and barely trying to get whatever crumbs that's left over. That's what it seems like. Because how are we going to compete when we're not capitalized? We don't have like economies. We don't have connections overseas. We don't. There's so many disparities that we have specifically. I mean, I have a friend who's not a freedman, who was a black immigrant, good friend of mine, was telling me he was a manager over a project in a large population freedman city, Baltimore, and he was telling me that you know he was shocked because he was like, man, how do we have a city that is run that, you know, top people at the top of the government are freedmen, and then he didn't say freedmen, but he was saying black American, and we have mandates that these contracts include minorities, which I thought would mean there would be a whole lot of black folks getting the contracts. And he's like, man, when it came time for all these contracts to go out and jobs to be produced from these contracts, it was like no black folks, and then I'm included on there, you know. So that's the story of America. It's a whole lot of people from a lot of other different cultures, Indians, and you know, like it's wild out here how every time when something is supposed to go to minorities, we know that means freedmen last. This FL and FML. You know what I'm saying? It's not F1. You know, and that's a huge problem, and that's why it seems like I'm gonna give y'all another analogy. It's like, you know, in the theme of the holidays and the Christmas time or whatever. It's like they have a box with gifts inside, and they can only use Freedman gift wrap and wrapping paper and Freedman bow ties, and it says from Santa to minorities, but the only people they give it to is everybody else is not Freedman. We know most of the gifts is given to white women, given to people that they call, that when they say black and brown, they mean, who is Brown? First of all, I don't even know who Brown is. Who is Ann? Seem to show up wanting to eat. Like I said, she ain't trying to cut up no food. She's not trying to go shop for the food. She's not trying to go work to make the check to be able to go shopping. But Ann Brown want to show up at every dinner with a plate in a to go box. You know what I'm saying? The to go. She got a little Ziploc. All of that, trying to eat, trying to get the food. So I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem, and you know the only way it's gonna be solved, we get into it every time. You got to have some power. Like you got to have some power to where you get state power, where we can go in and get senators, governors, legislature, U.S. House reps. We got to have some power, and the only way is we already know we gonna hit it every time, and that's that relocation, that Operation Closed Fist. We got to go back and get power in the southern states, and I don't want to spend too much time. You know, we always gonna go back to that, But man, I just gotta say, man, I was supremely I felt supremely disrespected and in sins from this thing. And the crazy part about it, if you look on Twitter, you look on social media, people are looking at this like it's some great monumental thing. Like all the credit and all the juice, not knowing that you just being abused, and pimped. I'm gonna swing it back around to Nyhiem.
Indeed. I wanted to bring Brother Ty on, but I had the brothers going there real quick. I know my brother Ty wouldn't mind if our sister Roz from the DMV jumped in front of him. Sister Roz, tell us what your thoughts were about this forum with these people once again using our. I mean, this time they just even took a bolder step. They used the name Freedman. We've put so much energy behind that name over this past year that it was a shock to see them sitting there at the forum and they have a picture of the old Freedman's Bank. It was just, I thought I was being trolled. I have to be honest with you. Sister Roz, I think Sister Roz is having an issue connecting. There she go. Can you hear me, sis? Yeah, Sister Roz is having an issue connecting.
Can y'all hear me?
There you go. There you go, sis.
All right.
Yep, I hear you.
All right. Peace, everybody. I wanted to get in here and just get a little bit of y'all ear on my Earth Day. I want to appreciate everybody for all the hard work.
Happy Earth Day, sis.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Happy Earth Day.
I just wanted to camelback on what I've been hearing in between me going in and out on this app. But basically, they were given, as far as these land grants, it wasn't one land grant, it was several, and they were given 146 million acres of land, and then wonder why you're not doing what they're doing. And then you got somebody like Kamala that went to a HBCU. That's her mask. She is not one of us. She is not a Freedman. She really doesn't care. She went into, okay, remember what we were saying as far as Howard University being formerly Freedman's Hospital. Right now, she knows a little bit about Freedman, and she's using our narrative. So my thing, y'all know I'm about these action items. I think we need to be flooding respectfully the vice president's box and say, hey, this is Freedman. Also, this is another thing that I want to talk to everybody about. We got all these different names for ourselves, but when we're coming and talking about this particular Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank that we're trying to get reinstituted, we need to start calling ourselves Freedmen. I don't care if your name is Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, or Mike. You need to call yourself the Freedmen, because that gives us the power. You cannot call yourself anything else, a hashtag. And I'm saying that specifically for a purpose, because I was doing it. Okay, so I'm not pointing the finger at you individually. If you're on here, I don't even know who you are, but I'm just saying, we as a people, we need to know what we need to call ourselves by, because if you're calling yourself a hashtag something, then you're basically moving off of the square that we have set up that's been set up by our ancestors, and you're moving off that square and letting other people come step in on your square. We cannot move off of our square. We are the Freedmen. We are to sit here and be the Freedmen. We're not going to move off that square. We're not going to let people just come in and take over and start getting the benefits in this era, especially since we have the knowledge and the wisdom, and we do have the power to call ourselves Freedmen. We will tell the vice president respectfully and whomever else respectfully, the freedmen specifically are the people that descended from slavery in the United States. You are committing an act of theft, and you are very disrespectful, ma'am, using Freedmen's Bureau or Freedmen's name and nomenclature for people of color, for anything and brown, black and brown, for minority, for diversity. Anytime people are using those words, we need to check them, family. You don't have to use profanity. Did I just curse? No, I did not. You can be respectful in what you're saying. Get your family, get the people that you know to actually make these phone calls, actually put it out on Twitter. Get your Twitter friends, get your Facebook friends, your social media friends, if you're a keyboard warrior, to start sending these kinds of messages saying disrespectful. We will not allow it. Also, call your congressman, senator, and say absolutely not. You cannot take the freedmen from us. So that's what I wanted to say. So I wanted everybody to understand. Do not sit there. You can't say I'm hashtag and then say, okay, benefits are given out. Who are you? I'm hashtag. Well, that doesn't match. If A doesn't match with the number 3. Do you understand what I'm saying? If A is they're gonna look at A. They're not gonna look and say 17. No, what are you talking about? You can't be hashtag and then call yourself Freedman too. Freedman has been in effect for 158 years. Why would something that was just incorporated a couple months ago?
My sister was going in first
Hell
and
yeah. Yes, she
foremost.
was. Yes, she was.
Shout out to our sister Roz going in. I want to just something real quick that Brother Ibrahim put in our inbox. Brother Ibrahim said it's a $9 billion loan. They stole our money and want to loan it to everybody. I want y'all to think about that. I want you to think about how they brought Afghanis over here, gave them our money, how they are considering right now giving illegal aliens whose families were separated at the border something, I believe, upwards to $3.4 million per family. Said the acts were too egregious. I mean, let's talk about the separation of black children from their families during slavery. Let's fast forward that. Let's go to the crack era when they brought this drug into our neighborhoods, basically initiating a chemical warfare on our people because we wasn't bringing cocaine or crack into our neighborhoods. We didn't manufacture any of the guns. We didn't manufacture any of the drugs. How did they get there? If they got there through the border, that was fault. That was the fault of this government. If they got there by airplane, that wasn't our fault. If they got here by boat through some port, still again, it wasn't our fault. But it found its way into our neighborhoods where we were criminalized for it. Even when I should say whites used at the same exact rates, we were criminalized for it and were arrested and faced harsher penalties, 3 to 4 to 5 times harsher than our white counterparts. Let's talk about it. We ain't gonna get into the conversation. I was being cliche, but let's talk about it. This is what they did to us. And now they're gonna, let's go to child separation. Fathers were taken off the streets, leaving their children who were being raised by single mothers. Most of the fathers couldn't even be in some of these homes in these quote unquote ghettos because of rules set forth that said that if in order for you to get this apartment and receive public assistance from the government, the man couldn't be in the house, which put him on the street anyway. They created the vagabonds and the vagrants and the things that we became. Because when you go into Mercer Baradaran's book, which highlights the plunder of the Freedmen's Bank, and the name of her book is The Color of Money, she breaks that down. She shows you what we did right after slavery, and then how we took our little bit and amassed a small fortune by the sweat of our own brow. So can't nobody tell me that our people are lazy. We are the results of something systemic, something intentional that is still affecting us to this day. Child and children's services all over the country disproportionately take black children. There are reports done on it that a black child's story is going to be believed by these children's services over any other group's story. That child could be shown to have made the story up. doesn't matter. It's another way to get a black child into the system. There's reports on it. So no one can't deny us that there's systemic racism going on. No one. Where is our compensation at?
It's going to the immigrants. And this is no new.
That's where it's going.
This is not nothing new. Let's go thing we talk about. We rooted back into the history of our freedmen, ancestors, and leaders. So some people think that immigration is some new agenda that, we're getting off message with. No, I'm just following the great king of the freedmen, Frederick Douglass, and the other great freedmen, W.B. Du Bois, and so on and so forth. What am I talking about? Let's talk about this immigration, how it's always been a problem for the freedmen, right? What did Frederick Douglass say in 1871, right? In an 1871 article in the Washington New National Era, Douglass reflected on the meaning of cheap immigrant labor, right? He said, labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Cheap labor, too, seems harmless enough, sounds well to the ear, and looks well upon paper. But what does it mean? Who does it bless or bid? It means that condition of things in which the laborers shall be so largely in excess of the work needed to be done that the capitalist shall be able to command all the laborers he wants at prices only enough to keep the laborer above the point of starvation. The former slave owner of the South want cheap labor. They want it to be from Germany and from Ireland. They want it to be from China and Japan. They want it from anywhere in the world but from Africa. They want it to be independent of their former slaves and bring their noses to the grindstone. You understand? This is something that was always been going on. He said, so, and what else did he say? He said, while his wages went to his pockets of another, while the bread that he earned in the sweat of his face was to be eaten by another, while he was to toil that another might live at ease, he could do so without opposition. Talking about the freedmen. We could do all that. We could struggle on our own. You understand? And we've been doing it on our own, right? But when he has his own mouth to feed, his own back to clothe, his own body to shelter, his own children to support and educate, the case is different. White bricklayers, white carpenters, and white painters combine to prevent any black man from working at these respective trades and attempt to bend the government to his narrow and selfish purpose. There is no mistaking that the purpose and destiny to which a portion of our white fellow citizens would devote the colored people of this country in the vigorous efforts now making to import coolies, What is Kamala Harris? If you come on now, coolies from China and kind of Asiatic slave trade with a view to supplant the black labor in the South. There is a litany of these kind of statements not only made by Frederick Douglass. We will just read one more statement from W.B. Du Bois. He said the two co-authored, right? This is in 1907. I read something from 1800s, read something from 1907, is The Negro in the South, where immigration against black workers, right? This is an ongoing perpetual problem. It says that the voice that calls foreign immigrants southward today is not single, but double. First, the exploiter of common labor wishes to exploit this new labor just as formerly he exploited the Negro labor. The second object of the immigration philosopher is to make sure that when the rights of the laborer come to be recognized in the South, that laborer will be white. And just so far as possible, that black labor will still be forced down below the white laborer until he becomes thoroughly demoralized or extinct. One element remains to be considered, and this is political power. If the black workman is to remain disenfranchised while the white native and the immigrant not only has the economic defense of the ballot, but the power to use it so as to him in the Negro's competitor, cow and humiliate him and force him to a lower plane, then the Negro will suffer from immigration. Now, this is supremely important because Kamala Harris at the end, if you read the transcript, at the end, she started talking about what she felt was most important. She tied in voter suppression and voting rights. She invoked the name of the great Fannie Lou Hamer. But all of these historical atrocities are targeted to one specific group. Voter suppression has its origin in our plight, specific our family's plight. You understand? The literacy laws were created to suppress our people's access to democracy, not Chinese, not Japanese, not Irish, not German, not our people, the freedmen. This was a freedman focus. You understand? And so when you talk about voter suppression and disenfranchisement and cutting people off from access and democracy, starting with us, that's who you have to start with. You don't start with our story. You start with the people. You don't use the people's story to do things for other groups. But this is not nothing new. I just read two statements from Frederick Douglass and W.B. Boyce, whose statements was almost 100 years apart from each other. You understand? But there was a good 50 years apart from each other. And they're talking about the same thing. And where are we at now today? Talking about the same thing. You understand? The same concentrated attacks on the same people, using the same systems of attack, immigration, disinformation, and misinformation. It's really weird how they do it. They talk about all of our tragedies to do stuff and uplift other people. But when we talk about our tragedies, they say we're playing victim. They say, oh, you're just playing the victim. They act as if we're living in a world as if reparations was done, as if Reconstruction wasn't overthrown, as if the Freedmen's Bank wasn't looted and plundered. They're acting like justice, but that never happened. But they want to create a narrative as it did, and now it's someone else's turn to get justice. No, 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 and no. We have to start with us, and you have to commit to us. And before I pass it, Bernie Sanders went all last year talking about we live in a time where we live in the greatest income inequality and wealth inequality in the history of mankind. Well, who is at the bottom of that, right? And if you're going to do justice or you're going to make an attempt to do equity repair for a situation that you say is the largest gap in income inequality and wealth inequality in the history of humankind, you have to fix the people who are suffering the worst. If you triage a medical situation, you don't start tending to the ears before you start dealing with the gunshot wounds. You have to deal with the gunshot wounds and the severed appendages and the people who are bleeding out. You got to deal with them first. They need help first. And you say, okay, well, you're just hurt. You can hurt over there. You're dying. You understand? Our people are on the verge of extinction economically and politically. And they're creating policy prescriptions steeped and soaked in our pain and suffering to uplift and use that to erase us with other groups. And it's been happening since instruction. Douglass just spoke about it. I read that statement. W.B. Du Bois spoke about it. I read that statement. And you have Kamala Harris. She used our story her whole campaign to get in. But I didn't see her getting slapped upside. I didn't see her parents in jail with Dr. King and the Freedom Riders. When the Freedom Riders was getting their head bust up and the buses were getting set on fire, I didn't see her mama hopping out of that damn bus. I didn't see her daddy wasn't nowhere around and none of that going on. They weren't doing the sit-ins. She just lies and lies and then lies some more, talking about where I was born in this work. Well, where's the pain and suffering? You had an elite life from an elite family who came over here through an elite pathway. Don't talk about civil rights justice work. Your parents was in California. They wasn't with Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. Your mama wasn't rocking with the Black Panther Party for self-defense. You understand? I didn't see her out there. You understand? So you have people that do that. You got one photo of Bernie Sanders sitting in a city and he talking about he was a civil rights leader. He was a part of the civil rights movement. No, you went to a march and you sat down somewhere. That does not make you a part of this struggle. That doesn't give you the right to co-opt this thing and use it as fuel for your political aspirations to do shit for other people. We cannot keep allowing this. You have to be able to check it. We have to fight like our lives depend on it because it does. We have the greatest justice claim and the greatest history in the history of America. And they use it, and you see it because they use it time and time again to do paramount policy prescriptions for everybody but us. So we have to wake up. We have to get serious about the work that we have to do, and we have to be willing to die about this thing because it's that important. Do you want to be extinct as a people? You got to ask yourself that. Wake up, look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I willing to be extinct? Do I care about the prosperity of my posterity? Do I care what life looks like 50 years from now when my kids are old? You understand? A lot of us are just too selfish. You care too much of you. And we do all this lineage talk, but you don't even care about your grandbabies and your unborn, the young and the yet to come, and those who haven't arrived yet. We have to fight and be willing to die to prepare a place for them to live and prosper in. Now I'm gonna pass it. I'll be back.
Fire. Woo. This is what we do. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our platform, Be the Power, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, go to our website, bethepower.org. Look at our 12-point political program. We have a plan. We don't just come here to talk, but we do come here to educate, and that involves talking. But there's action coming behind this particular talk. Know that. And everything that we need to do is being formulated. So, brother Ty Harper, go in, bro. Let the people know your thoughts and your feelings about, this whole Freedmen's Bureau Forum hijack, new 2.0 plundering of our bank.
Hey, thanks, brother. Peace. Peace to everybody. I'm glad you're here tonight. When I first saw this, and I got to be honest, I saw it on C-SPAN. I was like, what in the actual hell is going on? I was like you. I thought somebody was trolling us. I thought Roland Martin was putting up a joke. Then I got onto Reuters, took a look, and I was like, you can't be serious. It's bad enough that they're claiming that slavery was not as bad as we thought it was, because they tried to whitewash, and change. It is bad enough that they ended Reconstruction simply because they wanted their man as president, and they wanted to say, well, we'll let this man be president. We'll end Reconstruction. We'll pull the federal troops out, and you can have at it. It is bad enough they act like Jim Crow was 100 years ago when Jim Crow literally ended in 1968. Do not believe that 1964 political talking point. That was for politics. Something cannot end unless you take out all the laws. And the last laws were not taken out to 1968. The Civil Rights Act of 68 was the Fair Housing Act. Where, okay, you say you end segregation, but nobody can get a loan to live anywhere because of redlining. That's what happened. And then they want to talk about, this is the Freedmen's Bank Forum, knowing full well what happened to the Freedmen's Bank. They talk about the $9 billion plus, okay, that they're going to admit for loans, okay, for minorities, okay, and underprivileged and what they call them disadvantages or at-risk communities. Just like we said, in the United States of America, the word minority means anything other than a heterosexual white male. Point blank, period. That's what it means. Also, keep in mind that white women are considered a minority. That means if white women get things that were meant for us, that were meant for freedmen, it's going to go to their family, which means white men in their family are benefiting from this also. The thing that I find most sinister is that they're giving $9 million of loans, okay? Money that should be coming to us in economic inclusion, in equity inclusion, and for reparations. They're stealing from us, like Brother Ali said, to give to everyone else. Just like they stole and plundered the millions of dollars that we had in the Freedmen's Bank. And they gave it to everybody else. The Freedmen's Bank didn't fail because it was set up for failure. The federal government forced the Freedmen's Bank to give loans to white men, white businesses that they knew had no intention of paying the money back. And as I've stated before, we've had some research and some calculations, and we're not bankers, we're not financiers. If you take a look at the money from then in today's money, and you add interest and you add penalties for payments, for that alone, we are owed between $7 and $8 trillion. Let's not even think about the racial wealth gap for a moment. Let's not think about reparations. For the theft of our funds from that bank, they owe us $7 to $8 trillion. They always bring someone else into the conversation. Like Josh says, Miss Ann Brown. I don't know who Miss Ann Brown is, but I got to really talk to her publicist because that woman gets around. I have never seen a woman who wants to eat off of everybody else's plate and be in everybody else's conversation more than Ann Brown. I really want to meet that woman's publicist. And this is the real problem that I have with this whole thing that we're talking about right now. Everyone keeps using this word when they talk about freedmen, okay, especially Kamala Harris, who is nothing more than a chameleon. She becomes whoever she needs to be to get whatever she wants. But she's decided, just like has already been stated here, that she's going to be a Black American. She's not a freedman. Her family are literally slave owners from the Caribbean. I'm not making this up. Do some research. You will find out. If you take a look, she not only grew up and with most of her schooling in Canada, not the United States, but if you look at her birth certificate, her mother's birth certificate, they were East Indian. They were considered white during that time. How in the actual hell can you suffer from Jim Crow and suffer from our atrocities if you were considered white, the oppressive slave master ruling class? Now, we could put all that aside for a second, and if you take a look at everything, all the history, everything that we teach you, from BETHEPOWER and the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen, every time we're trying to tell you that Freedman is not something new. It's not something we came out with because it sounds cool. You hear the name Freedman and it registers and it resonates because it is who we are. The Freedmen's Bureau was created in 1865, not by an organization, by federal law and federal decree. The Freedmen's Bank was set up to do
Fact.
the exact same thing. The more that you look, and we've had some sisters and brothers on who actually been finally doing some research and tweeting it out, they found out everything that we've been telling you. They found out that the Freedmen Bank wasn't just one bank in the government like a credit union. There were over 130 different branches across the United States of America. Understand when we tell you that so much has been lost and so much has been stolen from freedmen that it is not funny. We are reclaiming our birthright. When we were freed, the term freedmen came before any, and the granddaddy of all lobbyists got it done. That's Frederick Douglass. So when people are saying, oh, the white people are never going to give us anything, like, you're goddamn right. They don't give us anything. We fight and we take it, just like we fought for that. You don't think Frederick Douglass, who had to lobby with and do battle with and fight for our rights during the time of chattel slavery, couldn't get it, got it done, and you said he couldn't? Are you insane? Martin Luther King Jr. himself had to deal with Lyndon Baines Johnson, a man who was literally rumored to be a card-carrying member of the KKK. Still got the Civil Rights Act passed before they assassinated him. Are you serious? This is our birthright. If you're not willing to fight for it, if you just want to hang out online, you just want to sound cool, that's fine. Keep in mind that the previous data said that we were going to be at zero wealth by 2053. Thanks to the pandemic, we don't have to wait anymore. 2053 is here, damn it. We have 8 years. 2030, if we don't do something, if we don't get our reparations, it cannot be reversed. That's why they keep doing these things. That's why they keep using symbolism. That's why they keep putting out people like Janet Yellen, who is the head of the Treasury. And I'm saying, like, wait, what? When they put the Freedmen's Forum, how do you have a Freedmen's Forum with no damn freedmen? They are spitting in our faces. The Biden administration has been acting the damn fool since they took office. And now they are terrified because not only have we been pushing back, not only have we stopped listening to the congressional butter biscuit call, not only have we stopped listening to their entertainers trying to tell us what to do, now they're terrified because we've actually found the federal laws that says that you were supposed to have been doing this already. If you look at the laws that Brother Logic was speaking on, that Brother Abba was laying out, that Brother Josh and Sister Roz was speaking on, the infrastructure for everything we are fighting for is already there. They've just been refusing to enact it. We need to demand the reestablishment of a full-on Bureau of Freedmen Affairs. We need a new Freedmen's Bureau. When somebody says, why not? I'm like, well, they have a Bureau of New Americans. The Bureau of Indian Affairs never went any damn where. Why are you trying to tell us we can't have it back? This is not a game. If we don't do this now, we're not going to have to worry about our grandkids and great-grandkids anymore, because that's going to be the line. There will be no great-great-grandkids. That will be it. You don't have to join the organizations that the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen if you don't want to, but you still need to go to the website and you still need to look at our 12-point plan. You need to look at our closed fifth policy, okay, to go back to the black belt and take over. You cannot listen to this shit anymore and tell me, and forgive me for cursing, but that's how pissed I am right now. You cannot listen to this and tell me that, oh, well, it's going to be okay. They now have Latinos and other immigrants, not American citizens, non-citizens, making voting blocks in major cities to take over and make our votes null and void, obsolete. Even though federal law and the Constitution say that to vote in any election, federal, state, or local, you must be a U.S. citizen at the age of 18 at the time that the vote takes place, period. That's in the 14th Amendment, okay? That is in the Voting Rights Act of 1965, part of the Civil Rights Act, and that federal law. The United States knows this. The White House actually issued a memo a month ago that I've actually spoken about and put out here saying the exact same thing. But people are not listening. You're listening to words like inclusion, listening to words like diversity. Dr. Neely Fuller put it best. He says, diversity, what are we diverting from? What are we diverting to, and how does this diversity help us? How does it improve us? We are diverting from what to what in order to do what? Does everybody remember this? Remember that from Princeton University, brothers and sisters, where they, the people at Princeton University had and used freedmen chattel slaves. Okay, when it was discovered, and the student body voted on, hey, let's make donations to give money back to these people. We want the university to take care of them. The university trustees once again put the poison pill in. Oh, we want to give scholarships and help communities of color, minorities, and at-risk communities. None of these communities were child and suffered Jim Crow. You have Ann Brown and her people talking about Juan Crow. Juan Crow doesn't exist. Point out one goddamn Juan Crow law. If you know of one, come on stage and tell us. Bring your proof. It doesn't exist. They're trying everything in their power to take everything that belongs to us and use our pain and our suffering. No one else in the United States of America is an American freedman. You have different native freedmen from the Native American tribes that actually owned slaves. The Chickasaw, the Cherokee, okay? I'm not going to go through all five because that would, like I said, I will get on a roll. I'm not trying to do that. I'm almost done. I'm about to land this, okay? And you have to say the name of your tribe. You're a Blackfoot freedman. You're a Cherokee freedman. But there is only one American freedman. And that bureau was established before anybody else in America got to use the name freedman for any other reason. They are stealing our birthright. They are trying to take it from us and laugh at us while they do it in our face. If you are not mad, if you are not writing your congressman, if you're not demanding that Biden remove that crap and issue an apology and issue an executive order to set up reparations, then you are not doing anything worthwhile. This is not a game. We're at war and survival is at stake. They are trying to wipe us off the planet and erase us from history. Understand that, listen to that, do that. Stop talking about fighting the power and be the power. That's what we're telling you. That's all I got,
Fact.
brother. I'm going to land that plane right now. Go ahead.
Ty said something that I want to provide some add on to, right? He talked about, I want y'all to understand how important this bank is and how nefarious what they're doing is, right? The Freedmen's Bank was not a capital investment bank, meaning it wasn't money that the federal government issued to the bank for loans to freedmen. The money and the wealth that the bank generated was deposits from individuals. Let me just give you some context on how criminal this stuff was, and now to even use this as a launching pad for POC politics is just a crime in progress, right? The Freedmen's Bureau Department of Education was the driving force behind the bank's creation, right? So it was created by the Bureau of Freedmen, just like Ty was talking about, right? Came an original trustee. Alvarado convinced Congress to create a board of trustees with 50 prominent citizens, including William A. Booth, Peter Cooper, John Murray Forbes, right? Y'all know who Forbes is, right? John Murray Forbes, right? George Whipple, Thomas Webster, and Johnny Jay. Many of these trustees lent their reputation to the bank, but were never involved in managing the bank. The charter of the bank also made clear that its purpose was to safeguard deposits and invest them in low-risk treasury notes and other U.S. securities. The bank's charter stated that the general business and object of the corporation hereby created shall be to receive on deposit such sums of money as may from time to time be offered, therefore, by or on behalf of persons heretofore held in slavery in the United States, on their or their descendants and to invest the same in stocks, bonds, treasury notes, and other securities of the United States. However, Section 6 of the Charter provided a small opening for future changes by stating that a third of the deposits, called available funds, could be invested anywhere. The section was vague and open to abuse, and perhaps because of its benevolent mission, the trustees were vested with broad discretionary powers with little oversight. Now, let me just talk about the what we did just real quick. The response to the bank was remarkable. Within 10 years, it handled more than $75 million of deposits made by more than 75,000 depositors, an amount that would approximately to Mercer Baradaman's research to be 1.5 billion today. This number is even more impressive considering the poverty that pervaded the Black community. It was immediately apparent that Blacks not only trusted the institution, but also had faith in the promise that small savings would lead to what? Land ownership, right? Because it's not just about giving us some money, it's about giving us some ownership. And we know that land is the basis of all independence, right? So if you want to be an upright and independent community, you have to own the community. You have to own the land. Land ownership, property ownership, business ownership, it boils down to ownership. Money historically has been used for freedmen and every other American as a tool for what? Ownership. And so most of these deposits were being saved to buy land and their productive goods, such as tools or agricultural supplies. And the South Bank deposits were usually made by young men trying to save land. You know, freedmen were using the savings bank in the way that they had been told to use it to climb up the economic ladder, that they had been told that turning wages into land ownership. Bank managers declared that the deposits were irrefutable evidence of the colored man's ability. You see this? The only people ever referred to as the colored man was the freedmen. You understand? Now they turned the colored man. You can find this term in legislation, history books, in early American history. The colored man is a black man, and the black woman and his black babies. You understand? Now you got people of color who could be anybody, who are the Hispanics. When they write on paper, they white folks, but they never call themselves brown. But the Democrats always keep calling them brown. The Democrats call them brown, but they don't ever call themselves brown. They say they're Hispanic. They say they're Latino. They say that they are Chicano. They say they all kind of things, but they never call themselves brown. And I work at a place where I have privilege to look at people's documents, and I see how they classify and identify themselves, and not one of them call themselves black or brown. They all call themselves white Hispanics. You understand? Every last one of them. And so what is this but a criminal enterprise? You understand? This is nothing but a crime in progress. You have to identify it and recognize it as such so that you can take the proper position in opposition of these attacks. But I just wanted to bring that because they're talking about the Freedmen's Bank, but they ain't giving Freedmen's Bank history. We're going to give you the history.
Indeed, indeed. Man, there's so much information being dropped here tonight that was lacking at the Freedmen's Bank Forum that was held by these people who are not freedmen, And I want y'all to familiarize yourselves with that term that was started by our brother Josh, right? Ann Brown, or Miss Ann Brown, because every time we talk about doing something for us, they add in somebody else. They add in Hispanics and other quote unquote people of color, the POC brigade. So we got to call people out from now on. And we got to use that term. Oh, they done invited Miss Ann Brown. They done invited Ann Brown to the barbecue, y'all. Everywhere we go, we can't barbecue by ourselves. We got to bring Miss Ann Brown. Just got to be there. Miss Ann, we are not inviting Ann Brown to any of our stuff at all. We got our own work to do for our own people. And it's just as simple as that. I'm not saying that we can't work with anybody in a coalition. No, I'm not saying that at all. But if they get specifics, we get nothing. We get absolutely nothing. We can't even get a weak George Floyd Justice and Police Reform Act passed. They want to strip the qualified immunity from it. Go ahead, Brother Ali.
What we did get, and I'm going to be short, is we got one of our own freedmen representatives advocating on behalf of Indian in this government. That's what we did get.
Clyburn, you speak of.
I'm speaking of Maxine Waters.
Oh. Well, remember Clyburn with the Catawba Indians, they
That's
oppressed
right.
our people as well,
That's
but
right.
that's right. You're right. Maxine Waters. That's right. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, the 1619 Act, brother. Don't forget, he called it the 1619 Act. Damn.
That's right. That's exactly what he
Wow.
called it. That's right.
And and the
That's right.
Catawba definitely were slave owners of people of African ancestry. That's an actual
That's right.
historical fact. So,
That's
Brother
right.
Devon, let's let Brother Devon go in. I know he's been waiting. And Kelly's had a hand up. His a sister named Kelly. I think it's a
No, that's
female
a
Kelly.
brother. Yeah.
Brother Kelly.
No, that's a
Okay.
brother. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead, brother Divine.
Peace, Freedman. Peace, Freedman.
Peace, Freedman. What's going
Peace,
on?
brother.
Man, yeah. So I know, this kind of jumped off last night. I saw the not the back and forth, but I saw Roland Martin insert himself like somebody tagged him, and he wasn't. And from there, I know you guys said you were gonna video dissect it, so I looked at the video as well, and I did some research on when it was renamed, when that particular branch of the building was renamed to the Freedmen's Bank in honor of us. And so I looked that up, and it was by this white man, there's a Jewish man named Jacob Lew, and he did it during under Obama. And so we know Obama wasn't any friend of the Freedmen, but I think it was his Secretary of Treasury, Jacob Lew, in honor of the 150-year anniversary of the bank, is when they first renamed that wing of the building, because it was built on the site where the Freedmen's Bank was torn down in 1899. And so I'm saying that to say, because when we went back and forth last night, one of the tweets that I put up was that it's no coincidence that they're trying to take our momentum, but it's also no coincidence that we're being called for a time as this, and I believe it's from our ancestors. And so we know Obama was no friend of ours, and we know, Jacob Lew, this Jewish Secretary of Treasury, regardless of why he did it, he still did it, and that just shows you the power. And I think the providence of the term Freedman, this status as being resurrected, largely by you brothers and us doing the research and getting on board, it just shows how that status has always been there. And so a lot of saying to resurrect it, but it was never gone. It was just sitting there in plain view. We just didn't even, take on the power that was already currently that was held. Other people know it. Other people have seen it and recognize it. It was just we have been moved so far away from it that we just got to step in and reclaim it. It's not even having to resurrect it. It's still there. And so what I also noticed that hold on, I got it right here. Let me just click on this real quick. It was in 2016 when they renamed it. Black Enterprise did an article on it. And what's most nefarious about this is that you have this publication called Black Enterprise. And we know how useless the term black is now that we are stepping into the full power of Freedmen. But nowhere in that article, we understand white media and mainstream media isn't going to talk about it. And you guys have read the press release that you read from, and it shows the milquetoast language that they used toward what really happened with the Freedmen's Bank. And they talk about how it failed when we know it was plundered and sabotaged. But in the Black Enterprise article, they also used that same language. And one of the gentlemen that was associated with it, when I checked his feed, his Twitter feed, he was celebrating that same forum that a couple of other, blue checks and boule folks was celebrating that appearance with VP and Yellen. But he was featured in that article back in 2016. And in addition to using that milquetoast language, what he also did was he framed the Freedmen's Bank to promote it in the form of black capitalism. And so, again, when I say the atmosphere that's being created by us in this research that we're doing, is that we are, and I think Brother Ty was talking toward this, we are like we're moving away from all the other, as my brother Logic says, the other forms of mission drift. So no longer are we operating and moving politically under the term black, we're all black the same. We're not moving toward and with the idea of what Pan-Africanism is now. And we've also moved away from this myth of black capitalism. And to land this plane, I want to read from, because I know you guys have been mentioning it all night, another book I have as well, The Color of Money. And she talks about the myth of black capitalism. And it says, Nixon co-opted the Black Power movement's rhetoric of economic self-determination to push for a segregated black economy, thereby justifying his neglect of other proposals for meaningful reform. Capitalism, specifically black capitalism, became yet another rhetorical weapon used to rationalize economic inequality. But when I scroll a bit more, here's where it hit home to me. It says, but Nixon, the master of political sleight of hand, not only would the promise of black capitalism curb the stronger demands of black separatists, it would appeal to white voters across the political spectrum, especially because the very loosely conceived plan was open to multiple interpretations. To blacks, it was a grant of power. Nixon said people in the ghetto have to have more than an equal chance. They should be given a dividend. To suburban whites, it would cure violence. After the riots in Chicago, they go Chicago again, in 1968, he reasoned, people who own their own homes don't burn their neighborhoods. So the middle class voters who held to the American values of community and the upward mobility, any program using the words capitalism, entrepreneurship, and self-help struck a chord, because to fiscal hawks, it would cost nothing. And so we got to understand that. Most of us in this room understand. I'm glad we're teaching this understanding to others, that black capitalism has always been used as a tool by the white power structure to encourage us to look at ways to try to figure out a problem that they forced onto us to figure it out for ourselves, knowing that that solution can never come.
Indeed,
Powerful.
powerful, powerful,
Yes,
powerful.
indeed.
Oh yeah.
And y'all can't, and y'all got to make sure rather y'all read Mercer Baradaran's book on this subject. She really goes in. It's called The Color. I mean, she thoroughly breaks down what happens to the Freedmen's Bank and how black capital was politicized by Nixon. Michelle Alexander, I believe, touches on this to some degree as well in the new Jim Crow. I mean, there's several places where we can find this history, and it all comes back to us today in the form of these opportunity zones. When you look at Trump, what Trump was trying to do with his $500 million investment to black Americans, I believe it was 500 million or billion, something like that. That money was going to go into those opportunity zones. That's would have done nothing for us as a people at all. It was just Trump taking a play out of the Democrats playbook. It's like, how do they keep getting the blacks to keep doing this or the blacks to keep oh man, we just got to repeat the same. Yeah, go ahead, brother. The Stone, the builder, rejected was after had his hand raised for a minute. You're up, and then brother Keelan, and we'll work the order from there. Go ahead. The Stone, the builder, rejected.
Oh, hey guys. This was a great room. Thanks for everything y'all are doing in terms of.
Oh, peace, sis. I'm sorry, your profile. I don't know why I thought you was a brother. My bad. Peace, sis. How you doing?
No, it's okay. No, I just posted some tweets to the Jumbotron just to kind of support everything that y'all were saying. Like, for instance, there was someone who was involved in the Freedmen's Bank form who linked the history to black and brown owned businesses. So that just like confirmed stuff that Josh was saying. But I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to say, like, as a suggestion, as we move forward in terms of strategy, I think reaching out to Maxine Waters would be helpful, because when I was listening to the video, Kamala and Janet Yellen said that she was there and like supported this effort. So it's like maybe Maxine Waters is just like ignorant to the history, or like she doesn't really understand that there's people out here right now who like identify themselves as freemen and are pushing for specific legislation and initiatives for that particular group. So I'm like, maybe she would be a good person to reach out to pretty soon about like our discontent about what's going on. But then also to Roz's point, like we should start like tweeting these folks. Like I also put into the Jumbotron Kamala's VP or Secretary Sabrina Singh. Like, you know, we should start planning and like strategically how to like just counteract the narratives. But then also my last suggestion, and I'll wrap up, is that I think it would be smart moving forward for people to link up with like 13th Amendment scholars. Like whether they be lawyers or not, like who study the 13th Amendment, because I think these scholars, if for instance there's like 13th Amendment projects or clinics at different law schools. There's one in like Nevada. I think there's one in California. Like you would just have to Google like 13th Amendment projects or clinics in law schools or whatever. And that comprises of like people, students who are like actively figuring out how people can use the 13th Amendment, whether it's for legislation or other initiatives. So I'm like, I think the 13th Amendment is vastly underutilized, in part because, well, it's just vastly underutilized. And I think there needs to be a connection made between like grassroots organizers and then like the people with the legal knowledge, right, to make stuff happen. So
Indeed.
I got a question. You sure? You sure it's the 13th Amendment, not the 14th Amendment?
well, it could be both, but I say the 13th Amendment because it has two sections, Section 1 and Section 2. Most people, we know about the exception clause of the 13th Amendment, where it's like, slavery is abolished except for a crime. But then there's also a particular section in the 13th Amendment that empowers Congress, quote unquote, to eradicate all badges and incidents of slavery. And that is accompanied with an enabling clause. Most constitutional amendments do not have an enabling clause. I recently learned. So that means Congress has even more power to erase the badges and incidents of slavery. It's a vastly underutilized section and amendment.
Mm.
And so that's why I'm saying there needs to be more conversation between like these scholars and grassroots organizers to figure. And I think, people like Politics in Black, like Erwin Chemerinsky, that's one person, he could, but there's more people out there, I think. So there's just
Indeed.
a conversation.
No doubt.
Indeed. Definitely. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, sis. Okay, so all right, brother Keelan. And then we're
Hey,
gonna go to Philip and then Shepherd Wolf.
all right, what's up, y'all? I was just here to say that I was coming in to originally talk about how I read today about two black families that come from George Washington, and they were slaves originally. He had a mulatto slave daughter, and he gave both families 15 acres, and that 15 acres changed the whole black lineage. And now that family is like a top wealthy black family in D.C. in Maryland. They're the Quakers and the Syphaxes. So I was saying we need to make that how we make that a big point on how we should be as a collective, because with the Special Order 15 giving us 40 acres, if they change their whole family lineage off of 15 acres, there's no telling what we could have did with 40 acres and owning that South Carolina to Georgia state line. And also, I was going to bring up
Facts.
with how, yeah, I was going to bring up with how the brother was talking about Richard Nixon using that black capitalism plan. That plan he did, it was a black capitalism plan. But how you going to do capitalism with just without giving any funds to a collective? You can't like you want me to do capitalism with nickels and dimes or my socks? Like that plan was to make sure our people would not demand the government funds and programs we were going to need to move up, like how white people got the New Deal and the Homestead Acts and all the GI bills. That plan was purposely put up. And you think about when that plan got brought up. Who had died that year? Martin Luther King Jr. That plan was purposely put up, and then the CIA ruins all the black organizations. And guess who they used to put that plan into place? A black Caribbean, Roy Ennis. So he came over here for immigration
Mm.
and did not want to and purposely made us go away from the radicalism politics that we were going after and trying to get the funds for our group that was owed to us. He pushed that plan hard, Roy Ennis in his later life became a libertarian, and his son was one of the top black faces in the Tea Party. So you know where their politics were at. They were not for the benefit of us. So that's why I say we have to change our politics, because our community. What's the first thing we always talk about? We need black business. We need so we need black companies. We need everything like this. How are you going to get those companies when you don't have any subsidies? Your collective ain't got no wealth, and you don't want to do the politics to where you fight for the wealth because you think being politically lazy is revolutionary and don't really know your history about how they taken the wealth from you and make sure that other groups got programs and funds to get the wealth and collective up. See, our people have to start learning, because I'm tired of hearing we got to be like the Asians, African immigrants, how they doing well when they come over here and we not doing well. How Caribbean immigrants doing well when they come over here, we're not doing well, because first of all, you don't know what caste system these people come from. These people can come from a family that has slaves, in the home Caribbean countries, or they enslaved our ancestors that got shipped over to America. You don't know where these people come from. These people don't come from the same lineage as your grandmother and your grandfather who were sharecroppers. I personally learned that my great grandmother and my great grandmother used to work in the crop fields with my grandmother on her back. How can somebody who comes from a lineage to where they're black, but they were black slave owners, how can they say they have the same background as me, and how can they try to talk to me?
Hold on, bro. I don't mean to interrupt you, but the time is winding down.
I understand.
What's your thoughts on the Freedmen's Bureau Bank Forum and them hijacking that?
See, that is the most sinister thing that you could do, because that has nothing to do with minorities. That's about to get to that point as well. That's where I was going. How can someone who comes from a family that came over here in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s, and they come from the top caste systems in their country, try to benefit from minority from the Freedman name? It's not about minority. And another thing is, as Freedmen Americans, we are not a minority. There is 45 million of us. The only group that has more people than us as an ethnic group in America are Germans with 49 million. And I don't even know if that's true. We are not a minority. Hispanics are not, there's not more Mexicans than us. They have to combine Hispanic together to make their numbers go up. Mexicans make up 82% of the Hispanic ethnic identification. When they make up 11% of America in total. The rest of Hispanics combined, besides Mexicans, make up 7.7% of America. So how is a group that's only truly 7.7% going to benefit and try to take over institutions and take over something that's in our name, the Freedmen? How can they try to benefit from that? Like, we have to put dynamic of something of ourselves, because we are not a minority. Again, we are the second highest ethnic group in America. We have to move away from race and become about our status and our ethnic group. We are not a minority.
Indeed. Yeah, y'all make sure y'all check out the Be the Power YouTube channel. Last year we did a complete and thorough breakdown on what Brother Keelan just said. I can't remember the exact title of that video, but it's on our YouTube channel. I think it was titled, "Are We an Ethnic Minority in the United States of America?" or something to that effect.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Brother Keelan. This thing is so glitchy, it's hard to even move this thing. Okay, so we got Shepherd Wolf.
Yo, peace and blessings to the room, man. Yeah, your brothers are
Peace.
super intelligent. Brothers and sisters are super intelligent, man. I appreciate everything I heard so far, man. I'm in 100% alignment with all of y'all stars, man. Y'all like a galaxy of knowledge, man. Damn, it's a blessing.
Honest.
Let's take it back to the Freedmen Bank. So the Freedmen Bank established its currency from the pensions of freedmen who were the pensioners from the Spanish War, the Cuban War, the Philippine War, the Civil War, and any other incursions out west. And they dough was matriculating. The dough that they got from their pensions was all put into that Freedmen's Bank. And then from that, basically, it gained interest and it became a lot of money, and risky investments, as everybody knows already, and them usurping our money, our future. At the same time, we was awakening to what thrift was. As we was progressing before we had the collapse of the Freedmen Bank, we was building thrift, not thrift stores with old clothes, but thrift savings and loans, the first banks, the first insurance company like in Durham, where we was knocking door to door, $1 insurance policies. Uh, they would later regulate that because we were becoming multi-millionaires from owning our own businesses and savings and loans and banks. But the way the glue that put all that together was the mooses, the elks, the Knights of Pythian, the benefit lodges in black communities that spring up organically because we recognized that wealth was power. We recognized that we had power in our communities, and we started opening businesses. These are the first businesses. A lot of accreditation has been given to the Greeks and the fraternities for being the architects, but that's just not true. Coming out the Freedmen banks, coming out the pensioners, for the war pensioners, basically started the lodges in the USO, and the patriotism piece came in later in the YMCAs and all that, the colored YMCAs. That was the first foundation, but the lodges was crucial. Once they destroyed the lodges and they started breaking down the structure of our businesses with regulations, the black banks, the FDIC, the extra enforcement on the banks that was in Richmond and Durham, and all the BS started coming into the game. They started devaluing and declassifying us, and that's when the Boule came into power through the Greeks as advisors to the king, and further eroded the community structure that we had. It wasn't a matter that we couldn't stack and we couldn't amass a bag because we were buying land. We had millionaires in the 1900s, even with the Great Depression, even with the Great Recession, and the Great Migration. We were doing okay. We was pushing through almost all of the barriers. Let's just fast forward to what we're speaking about right now today. There's a few ways that we still can push through. We still could use some legislation that takes our tax dollars that we pay into the system, our property tax, our wealth tax, our sales tax that we pay, all of the taxes that we pay as freemen today, right now. We could do something like what landlords do when you have to pay your landlord, but he's not doing what he said he was supposed to do for
Hey,
you
hey,
and
let me.
your apartment.
Hey, brother, I just want to jump in because I want to keep the discussion centered, right? I want the discussion to stay centered around the specific topic. We're gonna have a space where we have a discussion about what we feel needs to happen going forward,
Okay.
insofar as legislation and things of that
All right.
nature.
Facts.
We're
Facts.
gonna present our uh, proposals and our ideas and plans, etc. And we're going to have people come up and speak because it's time for the freedmen to take control over their own politics. Because if we don't,
Facts.
we are 10 years from now, 8 to 10 years from now, I, I don't know. I dread to even peer that far into the future. I can't.
Facts. All
So
right.
we trying to get everything done there. Definitely. So
I'll wrap
I
up
just
with
wanted to.
this.
Mhm.
I'll just wrap up with this then. Um, we the Freedmen Bank situation that what they trying to do for colored or whatever they trying to say, like for the lineage descendants, and the way they're trying to hijack that name and that symbolism is real
Mhm.
important that we try to stop them from taking that symbolism. That's something that is uniquely ours, that was taken from us once before, and if we allow them to take it from us again, we'll be doubly out of the game. I think that the way that the military played a part in the Freedmen Bank in the original sense is something that we make a push to try to use again. And that's why I brought up the taxes and the pensions and that type of stuff, because that was the original money that went into the Freedman Bank. The military, the black military, freedmen that are serving and have served, and the veterans, I think them as a catalyst as well as us hold a patriotic kind of formula to some of the things that because they can't front on people who are non-veterans. They can't front on Korean War veterans. They can't front on Iraq Desert Storm veterans. I think we need them in our coalition, and I'll wrap with that.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we here. We good.
Okay,
Yeah.
this thing is crazy. Hopefully they'll fix this glitchy thing. So, we're going to wrap it up. Sister Roz, I definitely want you to give us some words before we wrap this thing up, and we're going to just go back around to the fellas as we close out with this powerful message, and we'll update y'all on when we do the next space.
All right. Thank you, Brother Nyhiem. I just wanted to let everybody know that sister that has spoken before, wise words, but I mean, Maxine Waters knows quite well what she's doing. And even she had even put in like LGBTQ equity and money equity, and she's promoting that. So people that are in Congress know what they're doing. People that are in these local county councils and city councils, they know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, we need to get them out of this space anyway. We need to consider start running for these offices ourselves. We need to start pushing the messaging. We need to start making sure that the people that are running are doing things and running in our best interest, because they know what's going on. We need to name Freedman, Freedman first as a hashtag. Why? Because we can't say something else and then pop back into being a Freedman when there are and the brother that was disappointed. I mean, you sound like a younger brother, and I appreciate you, love you, but we gotta have you check back into the game. Use your energy. I mean, you can't sit there and check out and say, well, I'm tired and I'm feeling you 30 years old. I don't want to hear that. I got shoes that are 30 years old. So please don't give me that kind of energy. We need you checked in. We need you to sit here and be involved in our community, be involved in the freedmen struggle, and don't just sit back and just be disappointed at what politics is. If nothing else, step up and run for the office your damn self. That's all I got to say.
Indeed,
Powerful.
indeed.
Powerful.
That's right. That's right. So, Brahim, anything you want to say before we get up out of here, brother?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm choppy or not, but yeah, man, everybody go check out The Color of Wealth. It's a great read. It's really a great
The color
read.
of money.
The Color of Money by Mahersa Baradaran. And it's really a great read when you pair it with The Color of Wealth by Richard Rawson. I think they was thinking on the same plane. I read those books. One is about the plunder of banks, and the other one is about the plunder of land, and it both leads to this group. And I want to, so we focus on the Freedmen's Bank because that's their program was about. But like this bank plunder didn't just, it started with the Freedmen's Bank and then moved on to our other banking institutions, Jackie Robinson's bank and Jesse Bingham's bank, and I'll second what Roz said, Maxine Waters knows what she's doing, she's old, she's up there in age, she's ready for retirement. She's just trying to get her name on something for a legacy statement. She don't fool me. She was very subversive in her dealings with this. Kamala was the same. We got to be on this. Our voice has to be loud. Let's keep this thing moving. I appreciate everybody that came to this space. Thank you so much.
No doubt. I'm gonna go now, Naeem, and say, one love to the whole Freedman family. Glad everybody checked in, and contribute, listening into this particular subject, and those who contributed to the conversation. I'm much respect and much appreciated. We are one family, and shout out to my foundational Black Americans family. So, you guys are welcome into this dialogue because we're all one family. We all have the same national name, the same plight. You know what I'm saying? We looking to to unite this family. That's part of our organization's name, is the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. And so those foundational Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved are also freedmen. We are also foundational Black Americans. We are one family, right? And so to do what it is that we're talking about doing, gaining the political power we need, we got to bring this family together. Our thing has always been about the unification and upliftment of the Black family. And so that's what this is, the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. We have one family with the foundational Black Americans. Peace.
Yeah, okay, brother. I'm gonna go next. I just want to thank everybody for coming out and everybody for understanding how serious this is. Um, just like Brother Ali just said, foundational Black American brothers and sisters, you're welcome. B1 brothers and sisters, you're welcome. If you rock the hashtag, but you understand the need to fight under one banner and one voice, not monolithic leadership, but everybody working together. That's why I'm five fingers on the same hand. Come together and form a fist. You're welcome also. Thank you for coming. Thank you for understanding. And we are not going to let them take our legacy from us again. We're reclaiming it and we're not going to give it back up. Remember, all of you sisters and brothers who came up, especially the ones who read passages, thank you. We have to be able to do research and we have to be able to read. So, like we said, read The Color of Money. Seriously, read The Bloody Shirt. These are books that you need to read to get your political education started. Come on, United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen, our website, usadof.org, and get the pamphlet of political education, okay? Come to the website at our 12-point plan. The same thing on the Be the Power website, okay? BeThePower.org. Look at our 12-point political plan. We're doing politics and policy. We're not out here just talking. We have a fight, we have a plan, and we have a direction we're moving in. Peace.
Indeed. I want to bring my bro Josh up real quick to say a closing word, one of our BTP brothers. I sent you the request, Josh. But yeah, just before he gets up, like our brother Ty Harper was saying, make sure y'all visit the website, usadof.org. The pamphlet that he's speaking about is called the Be the Power Civics Guide. We put together a civics guide to teach us to, basically how to learn what it is to be a citizen in this country, because it's something that we are not taught. I received a message not too long ago, from someone saying that it was sad that they wasn't taught about any of this in school, anything about the Freedmen's Bureau or the Freedmen's Bank, et cetera, et cetera. So on the same note, when we look at this topic, this subject of civics, it's another thing that we were never really learned in. They didn't really teach us about civics. They taught us a few basic things, but if you didn't grow up in my era and seen those little schoolhouse rock skits, that was the closest that we got to civics understanding of them, and we didn't have nobody explaining that stuff to us, so we just thought they were cool little cartoons at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Josh, I don't know what happened. Why you ain't come up yet, bro?
Maybe he's not there, but it's like they replaced civics with social studies. That's what it seems like
That's what
happening.
they did. And then we learned about, it's so funny, we learned about the history of certain things that happened in America, and plus we were slaves, and then a whole bunch of world history. It was everything about everybody else, and kind of like it was kind of like they were preparing us for this day. You Negroes will be irrelevant in the very near future.
You know what's so funny? Yeah, they was teaching us world history, but most of it is European history, right? For the large part of it is European history. The funny thing is, they don't teach you about the Dark Ages. That's the funniest thing, right? You skip over that part. Skip over that part. But anyway,
right.
that's another conversation.
No doubt. So my brother Josh, I don't know, he's having issues. I hope Twitter fixes this thing. But he said, he told me to tell y'all, and don't just let them talk about the Freedmen's Bank without talking about the Freedmen's Bureau and Freedmen's reparations. And one day we're going to come on this space and we're going to do a Be the Power, United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen breakdown on reparations, like a real breakdown, what we feel is or should be the justice, the reparative justice that our people need so that we could heal. Remember, Malcolm said, if you 1-inch knife and pull it out 6 inches, that's not progress. Or no, he said 3 inches. Or he said if you pull it out 6 inches, that's not progress. He said if you pull it out all the way, that's not progress. It's the healing of the wound. What happened? Why you lie? I said it wrong, I know,
Yo, you made me
but
think of the J. Cole record where George Bush was like, "Fool me, can't get
oh, if
fooled
you
again."
fool me twice.
Yeah,
Definitely. I knew I butchered that. But so family, y'all follow us. Um, we're gonna keep doing this. Remember, go to our YouTube channel, Be the Power. I think our next episode, we're gonna actually talk about reparations and a specific organization that we feel is trying to undermine freedmen reparations, but they have their hands on control over this reparations movement in a way that many people are not aware of. So I don't know if we're gonna do
brother
that
Arthur
this week.
Ward, brother
Definitely.
Arthur
Shout
Ward.
out to the OG Arthur Ward. I don't know if we're going to do that this week or we're going to do that next Tuesday. So y'all go to our YouTube channel, Be the Power, and subscribe. Go to the websites, bethepower.org, USADOF. United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. Join our email list. We're going to be putting out dynamic content, and we have some great things coming up. I'm going to leave y'all with the motto that we use on our YouTube platform, and that is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.
Peace.
Peace.